Is Marvel Snap really dying? Some players think so. Oh no! I'm here to set the record straight. While the game isn't perfect, the flaws are far from deal breakers, and the fun, creativity, and excitement of Snap are stronger than ever. Let's dive into why this game still deserves your attention.
Did Second Dinner pay you to make this?
No, Second Dinner did not pay me to make this video, but I will accept retroactive pay. This video is not meant to dismiss all of the negative aspects of the game, so let's just hit them right from the top. First is card acquisition. Depending on where you are in your Marvel Snap journey, whether you are a newer player, in the middle of the journey, or an quote-unquote in-game player, you have the vast majority of cards. You've been playing for longer than a year plus at least. Card acquisition is just different for those players. A lot of in-game players, myself included, it's very easy to forget about the newer players. And if you can think all the way back to when you were a new player, card acquisition is fantastic. You are constantly getting new cards. All of those cards in the Spotlight caches are new cards for you. The experience is fantastic. Sure, you can't pick the exact cards you want. Those are done through tokens, which they have severely restricted the flow of tokens. So you really lose some player agency there. That's fine, because you're getting so many new cards, you can kind of make do. One thing this channel is designed to do is speak to players about how to navigate with the cards you have, how to create fun decks, and that you don't need to be playing some super sweaty meta deck to climb and succeed. For players in the mid game, things get a little bit more difficult. You start to get a slow drip of new cards, especially after you complete Series 3. So it just becomes, it feels less fun based on where you were just at, unlocking a ton of new cards. And I remember going through this journey myself, and it was tough. My path forward through that period was to select the deck, main that deck, and save all of my resources. That way, when I come out the other side and become an in-game player, I now can pick and choose what cards I want, what spotlights I get. I can use tokens. I have all of the resources I need. And that's not because I'm a whale. I get most season passes, not 100% of them, but you're still able to navigate this section as a mid-level player. And for players like me in the in-game, it stinks. I don't get many new cards. The fourth card in the Spotlight caches are tokens. The vast majority of times I'm just getting 1,000 tokens. And it just doesn't feel good. Along those lines, I literally have more than 500 unopened caches in my CL track, whatever that thing is called, because it just doesn't feel good to open. It doesn't feel good to get avatars, titles, more credits, which I don't really need at this point, and gold tickets. I don't care for those. And variants, which I'm probably not going to use. There just isn't a lot for me on that collection track as an in-game player. I'm not alone feeling this way. And for some players, there's a feels bad with the approach that Second Dinner has taken toward monetization. I don't have a problem with it. A lot of their monetization is around cosmetics that do not affect the game. The biggest, I guess, pain point you could point to that is more valid in my eyes is the season pass. The only way to get that card is with $10, and a lot of those cards affect the meta. You do not need to play the meta in order to climb. So it really is just this feeling of FOMO that doesn't really affect how you can play the game. If you look at my channel, I have a ton of off-meta decks that don't necessarily use the latest and greatest new cards. I did not get the Surtur Season Pass. That is a extremely strong card, and I was able to hit Infinite. I was able to complete Deadpool's Diner during that season, and so I was fine without the Season Pass card, as you will be too if you opt not to spend those $10. As far as players leaving and content creators quitting or switching over to Pokemon TCG or splitting their time, every game has players who burn out and players who get tired, And that doesn't necessarily mean the game that they were playing is dying or will die or is on its way out. A perfect example from my personal experience, I used to, if you look at this channel, the start of it 2-3 years ago, it was Fall Guys videos, a somewhat of a smallish game. It went viral and then it just shrank, the player base shrank. I was very good at that game. I had friends that were very good at that game, and we got burnt out. And a lot of the same complaints. The company got greedy, and they're monetizing the wrong way. They're not releasing new features. The development team doesn't know what they're doing, and it's getting stale. You recognize a lot of those same complaints, and that the game is still around, it's still thriving, because it provides a very unique gameplay experience. So to shift a little bit into the positive with Marvel Snap, this gameplay experience is fantastic, and you really can't it hasn't been replicated one-to-one anywhere else. There will always be competitors in the card game space, right? There's Hearthstone. There's something called Mythgard. There's, of course, Pokemon TCG. There's something called Ascension. And the closest ripoff is Tempest Towers of Probaccio. Am I saying that right? That is just about a one-to-one direct copy of Marvel Snap. Same gameplay mechanics, very similar cards. It, of course, does not have the Marvel license, so it has original characters. But this game is essentially Marvel Snap. And you probably haven't heard about it, or it was through a Marvel Snap content creator back when that game came out. They did a lot of sponsorships, and that game is pretty much identical, and it hasn't sniffed the levels that Marvel Snap has. And so if there would have been a game that would have threatened Marvel Snap, that would have been it, because the gameplay is so tightly coupled with what Marvel Snap has to offer, and it just hasn't. The level of gameplay and depth in Marvel Snap is fantastic. The deck building puzzle I absolutely love. That is what I try to do in every single deck video I make. I don't always hit my high bar, but I like to think I hit it a fair amount of time. And that just goes to show you, you don't need to play specific decks to have success, and more importantly, have fun in this game. To cover some different types of players, there are the returning players, the players that have stopped playing for a period of time and want to come back and return. That experience has to be improved, but like I've said before, you really don't need new cards to be competitive. There are content creators that have returned to the game and they are able to be competitive. And in my mind, it is a fun challenge to try to construct an off-meta deck, a lacking deck, and compete in that space. One of the things I like to regularly do is to craft Series 2 decks. And that doesn't include, clearly, Series 3 cards even, let alone Series 4 and 5. And I like to show how competitive those can be. Of course they are lacking decks. I never try to fool anybody. But you can be competitive, you can climb, and you can win. There are in-game players who I don't think have anything to complain about. If you're an in-game player and you've been somewhat smart with saving your resources, you can get every single card you truly want. I'm in a perfect position to get it. I have more than enough tokens saved up, which I hoard like I'm a dragon. I usually have at least 8 keys that can go down depending on my luck and depending on how many cards in a row come out that I want. But I'm in a perfect position to get the cards I want, as a lot of in-game players are, if you are judicious and smart with your resources. And then we have new players. I see a lot of them are watching my videos, leaving comments, and they have a wildly different experience for some of the reasons I've covered before. And also, like, everything's new and you're still learning and you're still getting better and you're going through this deck building puzzle, and you can't net deck and you can't use meta decks. So you really do see that, oh, I can be competitive and I can climb with my substandard deck. Now, a lot of the losing newer players have is due to game knowledge, which sometimes is tough to see because you see on your opponent playing all these fancy shiny cards and you going, man, I just lost to this new Series 5 card, when that isn't actually why you lost. Everybody loses. It's snapping and retreating, which is more important, and you just don't know how to snap and retreat properly to maximize your cube gains. But once you gain that game knowledge, you're now in a much better position to snap and retreat with your quote unquote substandard deck, your Series 2, 3, sometimes even Series 4 and 5 cards are in there because, again, you're unlocking cards through the Spotlight caches. You will really start to see improvements and see that you can win. And then as you transition, the trick is not to get caught up in chasing the meta and chasing the latest and greatest, which I know is tough. You see a lot of videos, as do I, like, this is the best new deck. These are the top meta decks. This is what you should be using. Don't buy into it. You don't need to use those decks. I recently made a video on Deadpool's Diner where I used a Phoenix Force deck that has a 40% win rate, but I was able to beat that mode completely. I was able to get a bunch of conquest tickets, and Phoenix Force will never be meta. It's a little bit difficult to pilot, and it's very inconsistent, so not a lot of people have patience for it. That goes to show you, you don't need to play any type of meta to be good, and it's just not forgetting that as you get more cards in your collection. So what makes Marvel Snap so fun and why you should be playing it? It is truly a unique game experience, and you do not have to play certain decks to quote unquote win. The big thing that sets Marvel Snap apart from all of these other mobile card games is the snap and retreat mechanic. In almost every other card game, Pokemon TCG included, it is just, did you win or did you lose? Period. And that is how you climb or gain or earn whatever you can. In Marvel Snap, it is not about win rate. It is about snapping and retreating. And if you can do that properly, if you can do that efficiently, you will climb and defeat every single mode with a below 50% win rate. And in any other game, if you have a below 50% win rate, you are not going to be good in that game. You're not going to be high ranked in that game. But in Marvel Snap, you can be high ranked with a 40% win rate. So what that means is the game is only as stale as you allow it to be. You don't need to play the meta. You can play any deck you want to. Well, not any deck. The decks do have to have some amount of power. But again, my channel does a fantastic, am I being too biased? Does a fantastic job of showing decks that can be very competitive. That is why I have Shang-Chi, truth be told, in a lot of my decks, because they aren't as powerful as the meta. But Shang-Chi is the great equalizer. He nullifies all of that power in one lane, and then I just have to focus on winning another. You only have to win 2 lanes. So this is why Marvel Snap will always be fun for a lot of players, because you do not have to play certain decks, where a lot of these other games you really have to, because you have to win. There is no snapping and retreating, and your losses count for less than your wins if you're snapping properly. A loss is a loss is a loss in these other games. Marvel Snap does have some flaws, but those flaws are not in the actual gameplay. It's everything else that is around that gameplay. And while yes, that can ultimately lead to a game's demise, I know the team at Second Dinner, they really care about the game. Why wouldn't you? They want the game to succeed. And so they are definitely looking into addressing some of the pain points that the players are experiencing. But otherwise, I'm having a blast with the game. I continue to have a blast with the game. and I don't ever feel pressure to play a certain deck or a certain type of deck. I clearly construct my own decks the vast majority of the time, and I have a ton of fun playing them, as I hope you all do too. So don't buy into all the doom and gloom about Marvel Snap. It is a fantastic game and a fantastic experience, and I am here to help. That's why I created the channel. That's why I got into this. So ask me any questions. The community that is being built at Nerd Dynamite is fantastic. A lot of other helpful people in the Discord. If you need help, ask on one of my videos in the Discord. I'm not doing this for views. I'm doing this to help the community and to try to make this corner of Marvel Snap a better place that is not toxic and everybody helps each other out and has fun. If you disagree, let me know. I'm open to hearing alternative perspectives. I've heard a bunch of them, but I still have disagreed up to this point. But maybe you can change my mind. Until next time. You see clearly some of your Snap content creators are doing some of Pokemon Snap? Pokemon Go? Whatever that dumb game is called.